The moon hung low over Blackridge territory on the night of the ceremony, round and silver, watching the pack gather beneath the old oaks. Hundreds of wolves stood in neat rows, their eyes fixed on the wooden platform where Alpha King Cale Thornheart waited beside the fire. Beside him stood the woman the moon itself had chosen for him. Her name was Wren Ashby, and she was the lowest-ranked Omega in the entire pack. Wren had known since she was 16 that Cale was her fated mate. She had felt the pull the very first time their eyes met across the training grounds, a warmth in her chest that told her, without words, that they belonged together. She had never told anyone. She had simply waited, hoping that one day the bond would be recognized in front of the pack, the way it was supposed to be. Tonight was supposed to be that night. Instead, Cale stood tall in his ceremonial coat, his jaw tight, refusing to look at her. The pack elders whispered among themselves. Wren's heart pounded so hard she thought everyone could hear it. "Wren Ashby," Cale said, his voice carrying over the crowd, flat and cold. "Before this pack and under this moon, I reject you as my mate." The words hit her like a blow. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Somewhere near the front, a woman in fine silk robes smiled, the daughter of a rival pack, the woman the council had chosen for Cale instead. An alliance, a political marriage. Everyone had known it was coming, except, it seemed, Wren. Cale did not explain himself. He did not apologize. He simply turned and walked back toward his father's old throne, leaving Wren standing alone on the platform with hundreds of eyes on her, judging, pitying, some even smirking. She did not cry, not there. She would not give them the satisfaction. She held her chin up, stepped down from the platform, and walked through the parting crowd with as much dignity as she could gather. Only when she reached the edge of the forest, far from prying eyes, did the tears finally come. She kept walking. The trees grew thicker, the moonlight dimmer, until she reached a part of the woods the pack called the Old Boundary, a place no one entered because it was said to hold ancient magic that no longer served any purpose. Legends spoke of the first wolves who once ruled these lands, pure white creatures with eyes like starlight, said to be the ancestors of every wolf shifter alive. The stories said they vanished 1,000 years ago, hunted to extinction by wolves and men who feared their power. Wren did not think about legends. She thought only of the humiliation burning in her chest, the way Cale's voice had cut through her like a blade, the way the whole pack had watched her be discarded like something unwanted. The pain became too much to hold inside. Something inside her chest cracked open, a pressure she had never felt before, spreading through her bones like fire and ice at once. She fell to her knees in the soft moss, gasping, and for the first time in her life, she felt her body begin to change. Her first shift had always been expected to come quietly, privately, the way most Omegas experienced it, small and unremarkable. But this was different. Light poured from her skin, soft and silver, and where a small gray wolf should have emerged, something far greater took its place. When the transformation finished, standing in the moonlit clearing was a wolf of pure white fur, larger than any wolf the pack had ever known, with eyes that shone like captured starlight. The forest around her seemed to hold its breath. Old magic, dormant for 1,000 years, stirred awake beneath the earth. Miles away, at the same moment, every alpha king and queen across the wolf kingdoms felt something shift deep in their bones, a pull toward Blackridge territory they could not explain and could not resist. By morning, the first of them arrived. King Osric of the Frostfall pack, an old and powerful alpha who had never bowed to anyone in 300 years of rule, walked to the edge of Blackridge's border with his guard beside him. He said nothing about diplomacy or alliance. He simply stopped at the tree line, looked toward the woods, and knelt. Cale, watching from the gates with confusion written across his face, demanded to know what was happening. Osric only said 4 words. "The White Wolf returns." Word spread through the wolf kingdoms, faster than fire through dry grass. Kings who had spent decades fighting over land and power abandoned their disputes and traveled toward Blackridge, drawn by something ancient calling them home. One by one they arrived, and one by one, when they caught sight of Wren in her white wolf form standing quietly at the edge of the forest, they knelt without being asked. Ren did not understand what was happening to her. She had shifted back to human form the morning after that first night, exhausted and frightened, unsure if what happened had been real. But when she returned to the Packlands, she found strangers everywhere, kings and queens from territories she had only heard of in stories, all of them looking at her with a reverence she had never experienced in her life. An elder named Marin, one of the oldest wolves in Blackridge and a keeper of ancient histories, approached Ren with tears in her eyes. She explained what the others already seemed to know. Ren carried the blood of the first wolves, a bloodline believed lost for 1,000 years. The pain of the rejection, the breaking of the mate bond, had been powerful enough to shatter whatever had kept that ancient power sleeping inside her. "You are not powerless, child," Marin said gently. "You never were. You simply did not know what you carried." For the first time since the ceremony, Ren felt something other than grief. She felt the quiet, steady beginning of strength. Cale watched all of this unfold with a growing sense of horror at what he had done. He had rejected Ren to please his council, to secure an alliance with the Redthorn pack through marriage to their princess, Alina. He had told himself it was necessary, that emotions could not be allowed to interfere with the survival of his kingdom. Now he understood that in trying to protect his pack, he had cast aside the very person capable of protecting it, far better than he ever could. He sought her out 3 days later, finding her in the garden behind the healer's house, sitting quietly among the trees, while 2 visiting kings stood respectfully at a distance, waiting for an audience with her. "Ren," he said, his voice softer now than it had been on the platform. "I need to speak with you." She turned to look at him, and for a moment, he saw not anger, but a tired kind of sadness. "You had your chance to speak, Cale, in front of everyone." "I made a mistake," he said. "The council pushed for the alliance. I thought I was protecting Blackridge." "I never thought—" "You never thought about me at all," Ren finished quietly. That was the problem. Cale had no answer for that, because it was true. He had known, deep down, that the bond between them was real. He had felt it the same way she had. But fear of his counsel, fear of appearing weak, fear of choosing love over duty, had made him choose Alina instead. Now duty and love had collided in a way he never expected, and he was the one left standing outside of it. "I want to fix this," he said. "Reject the bond with Alina. Make things right." Ren studied him for a long moment. "You didn't reject me because you didn't feel the bond, Cale. You rejected me because it was convenient. Now that I have power, it's convenient again to want me back. Do you understand how that looks?" The words struck him harder than any physical blow could have. He had no defense, because she was right. Before he could respond, a horn sounded from the northern watchtower, low and urgent. Riders came in fast, one of them nearly falling from his horse in exhaustion. The Redthorn pack, the very pack Cale had tried to secure through marriage, had turned against Blackridge. Their army was already moving, and it became clear that the marriage alliance had never been about peace at all. Princess Alina's father intended to use the union to weaken Blackridge from within, then seize its lands once the wedding bound the 2 packs together in name only. Cale's kingdom, the kingdom he had sacrificed so much to protect, was now hours away from war, and the ally he had chosen over his true mate was the very enemy marching toward his gates. Panic spread through Blackridge as reports came in. Redthorn's forces were larger and better prepared, having planned this betrayal for months. Cale gathered his warriors, but even his most seasoned generals knew the numbers did not favor them. It was Ren who stepped forward. She had not asked for this power. She had not asked for kings to kneel before her, or for ancient blood to wake inside her chest on the worst night of her life. But she looked around at the pack members preparing for a battle they might not survive, people who had never wronged her, families with children who had done nothing but exist within Blackridge's borders. And she knew she could not simply walk away. "I will not fight for Cale," she told the gathered warriors and visiting kings that evening. "I will fight for the people who have no part in this, for the ones who deserve to see tomorrow." The kings who had knelt before her did not hesitate. Their armies, gathered originally out of reverence and curiosity, now stood ready to defend Blackridge alongside its own warriors, united under the presence of the White Wolf. The battle came at dawn 2 days later, the Redthorn forces sweeping toward Blackridge's borders with confidence born of careful planning. What they had not planned for was Ren. She entered the battlefield not as an Omega with no rank, but as the massive white wolf the ancient stories had once described, moving through the chaos with a speed and strength that seemed to bend the world around her. The ground itself seemed to answer her presence, old magic rising to meet old magic, and where she fought, the tide of battle turned. She found Alina's father, the Redthorn Alpha, near the center of the fighting, directing his forces with cold precision. When their eyes met, even he, a king who had planned this betrayal for months, faltered at the sight of her. The battle around them slowed as both sides watched the confrontation unfold, the White Wolf against the king who had tried to use deception to steal a kingdom. It did not take long. Whatever power lived inside Ren's bloodline, whatever the ancient magic had chosen to give her, it was enough. The Redthorn Alpha was forced to yield, his forces scattering or surrendering, as word spread that their leader had fallen before the legendary White Wolf. By mid-morning the battle was over, and Blackridge still stood. In the aftermath, as healers moved through the field tending to the wounded, and the visiting kings began to disperse back to their own territories, Kael found Ren sitting alone near the edge of the forest, human again, exhausted but unharmed. He knelt in front of her, not as a king seeking to reclaim what he had lost, but simply as a man who understood, finally and completely, what he had thrown away. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said. "I know that. But I wanted you to know that what you did today, you didn't do it for me. You did it because your heart is better than mine ever was." Ren looked at him for a long moment, the exhaustion in her eyes mixing with something quieter, something that was not quite forgiveness, but was no longer only anger either. "I'm not the same person you rejected on that platform, Kael," she said. "I don't know if I ever will be again, but I'm willing to let time show whether you've truly changed, or whether you'll only remember tonight until the next difficult choice comes along." It was not the answer he had hoped for, but it was more than he had any right to expect, and he accepted it with quiet gratitude. In the weeks that followed, Ren remained in Blackridge, though she no longer lived in the shadows of the pack's lowest ranks. Kings from territories near and far sent envoys to speak with her, to seek her counsel, to acknowledge the return of a bloodline the Wolf Kingdoms had believed lost forever. She did not seek power, but power had found her anyway, and she carried it not with pride, but with the quiet steadiness of someone who understood exactly what it meant to be overlooked, and had chosen, even then, to protect those who could not protect themselves. Kael ruled beside her as an ally now, rather than a mate who assumed her devotion, working slowly to rebuild whatever trust his rejection had broken. Whether their bond would one day be whole again, no one could say for certain, not even Ren herself. But for the first time since the night of the ceremony, she walked through Blackridge without lowering her eyes, without shrinking from the whispers of others, because she finally understood something no rejection could ever take from her again. She had always been more than what they saw. She simply had to break before the world could see it too.